Well, hello again, everybody. Happy New Year again. For those of you joining us online, my name is Joel Dorman. I'm the lead pastor. Glad you are with us on this first Sunday of 2022. And we know a lot of folks will check us out there before they ever join us here. So when you do find yourself assembling with us and joining us in person, we will be like New Year's Day celebrating when you're able to join us. But thanks for being with us wherever you find yourself today. Happy 9th day of Christmas if you're keeping up. What is the gift for the 9th day of Christmas? No cheating. 9 ladies dancing, that's right. Which is going to be a little higher expense this year. Minimum wage went up. So it's probably going to cost you a bit more, but I'm sure your true love will appreciate the effort. Hopefully you grab those message notes there in your bulletin as we get started for the first message series of 2022, first message of 2022. And I want to start off today talking about habits. Now, way back on August 29th of 2021, which seems like an eternity back, we did a message called Uphill Hopes. And we talked about that our upward hopes require uphill habits. You can jump on our website and you can watch that one again, listen to it. We talked a lot about habits and how they're formed and why we need to develop good habits and why we fail at changing habits when we don't do certain things. But it was based off part of the idea of a book called The Power of Habit. And we pulled a bit from that where the author talked about this 3-step process that habits take. That there's a cue that tells your brain, okay, pull this one out of the memory bank and use it. Then there's the routine, which is what we most often associate with a habit. Then there's the reward, which is, tells our brain, remember this, it's good. So, for example, most people, if you ask them, hey, did you brush your teeth this morning? Most people have to stop and think about it. And why is that? Because habit is what lets our brain go into autopilot. It's what allows us to shortcut some things so we don't have to always think consciously about every single thing we do. Maybe you might say the same thing about, did you put your socks on this morning? You always have a second or two you stop and think because that's a habit we do. At least I hope it's a habit, you brushing your teeth and putting your socks. Some of you look at me like, no, I don't pause. I know I did. Well, okay, maybe you brush your teeth once a week and for you think about it. But for the rest of us who brush twice a day, it's a habit. We don't think about it. Which is why when we get to the new year and everybody talks about, developing new habits and New Year's resolutions, most of the time they're focused on the routine, which is why we fail. Because a habit takes about 8 weeks to form, which is why those of you who have gym memberships, maybe you've seen the increase in population of the gym and everybody starts coming out and all of a sudden you see that in about mid-February they all quit. Why? Because they need 2 more weeks for that habit to form. You need 8 weeks for a new habit. That's totally an aside. Those of you who are gym rats, you are going, yeah, why does everybody show up in January? New Year's resolutions. They'll be gone mid-February and it's all yours again. But because we're focused on routine without the cue and the reward. Now, why does any of this matter? Because this is true whether you're trying to lose weight, stop smoking, change any habit. You want to be a nicer person. We always fixate on routine when we actually got to fixate on the other 2 as well. Because habits are formed through all 3 steps and they require repetition, 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 repetition. Just like it does when we're learning to brush our teeth. We have to go through all the same process over and over and over and over and over again to the point that it becomes muscle memory and your body just does it. So, musicians say it's a similar thing. Musicians don't think about playing, they just play. Why? It's habit now. The muscles have memories. I play a few instruments, and for all of the instruments I play, I never have to consciously think about it. Why? It's habit. It's been reinforced through repetition and repetition and repetition over and over until that habit just became part of just who I am, I suppose. That's the power of habit. But the same is true in our spiritual lives as well. That habits are reinforced through repetition, and they're reinforced by this cue that produces a routine that then makes a reward. Change any one of those and you've changed the habit. Want to build one of those, want to build a new habit, you're going to have to build something into the system. It's not just a routine. I love that everybody wants to read through the Bible in a year, but why do we all putter out around February? First, it's because we hit the books of the Bible that are a little tougher. But secondly, it's because we're about 2 weeks shy of getting to the point that it becomes a habit because we don't have a reward built into it. There's no feeling of accomplishment built into that. Again, this is just how we're wired. And yet, in a big macro sense, God has designed the perfect system to encourage us to develop good spiritual habits. And that's our local church. That's what God designed that system. It's what He created to do it. The problem is we oftentimes move that down in our list of priorities, and we're so individualistic as Americans, it's kind of our culture, that we sometimes would downplay that group in order to say, well, I can do it all by myself. We're going to talk about that and where that leads us later on in the message. But today we do start a very special series. It's only 2 weeks long to get us started here at the front of a brand new year. Everybody does this new year, new me. Well, here's a chance to really have a new you. Here's a real chance to develop some really good, effective spiritual habits that will make an eternity difference. The series is Next Steps because that's a saying, that's an expression we talk about a lot around here. We say, what's your next step? Or we say, take the next step. Make one more step towards Jesus. It's kind of our language here. But it's just because we all have somewhere else we can step. There's one more step we can all take. None of us have achieved perfection. None of us are done growing. So there's always one more step we can take. And today we're talking about what is probably one of the foundational steps for us as disciples of Jesus, and that is connecting to the family of faith, connecting to the church, the big church and the small church. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes and why there's a difference. But we're in the book of Hebrews today in the New Testament, Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 through 25. Hebrews chapter 10, 23 through 25. It's page 822 in the Pew Bible in front of you. And if you do not have a print Bible of your very own and you would like one of your very own, please keep it and consider this a gift from us. It's a New Year's gift to get you started on some great habits. Page 822 in the Pew Bible. Words are on the screen as well. You can look at it in your print Bible, electronic Bible on the screen. I do not care. I just want you to see this for yourself. Get into the Bible so it can get into you and make a difference. Here's what the inspired author of Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 through 25. He writes, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Now, verse 23 starts off with a very difficult thing to do. The author writes, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess." That is a very hard habit to make. It says, let us hold unswervingly, meaning not deviating, not going to the left or the right, not stepping off the path, but staying exactly on the straight and narrow path and don't give up 1 inch either direction. That is really hard to do. If we're really honest, that is extremely hard to do. And so, but he tells us this is what we're supposed to do, to hold to this, to cling to this, to grab it and not let go. And this is what we're talking about is the very hope we profess. This is what saves us. This is the story of Jesus coming down, what we just celebrated at Christmas time. Technically, it's still Christmas time, but Advent through December 25th, it's what we just talked about. Jesus coming down to earth, living, dying, rising again. That is the hope we profess. That's the hope that changes the world. And we're told to cling to that and don't deviate from it. That is almost impossible. But yet the author writes it in such a way as to act as if it is possible, which is why the next 2 verses are so critical. By itself, this would be a pipe dream. I mean, by itself, this would be one of those things you go, hey, that's great. Good on you. That sounds wonderful. I mean, you just kind of would look at it and go, I don't know how that works out in real life. Because the answer comes in the next 2 verses. Because the next 2 verses give you the means by which this is supposed to happen. Let me say that again. The next 2 verses tell you the means by which that is supposed to happen. By ourselves, this habit is almost impossible, but it's meant to be in the context of what he's about to write. Look at it again. Here are the means, verses 24 and 25. This is the how, verse 23 happens. "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." You see, Jesus has already designed the system to make this work. He's already designed the system to help us make verse 23 a reality. He's designed the church. He's designed the community of faith, the family of faith. Now, we have to unpack the word church just a little bit because modern English usage has just obliterated the biblical understanding of this word. And this is one of my, rants. So those of you who have heard me talk about this subject for more than twice, you might be tempted to tune out, and that's okay. I'll wave at you and you can tune back in a few minutes because I say the same thing every time. But in the Bible, the word church never, not even once, refers to a place or a location. Never, ever, ever, not once. The word church is never a location. Google Maps or Apple Maps may say you come to a church. That is not true. The church has come to a building. That is what the biblical definition is. The biblical definition of church, the word literally in Greek that we just read, originally in Hebrew, that was in Greek, originally in the book of Hebrews, that was written in Greek. The word church that's ever found in the book of Hebrews or ever found in the New Testament means assembly or a gathering of people. It wasn't even a special word in the first century. It was their word. They would say church anytime a group of people gathered. It wasn't even a religious term. It just meant a group of people that gathered for any reason. You could have had a church on Christmas Day. That's how they would have used the word. The word wasn't a religious term, but it meant a gathering of people, an assembly of people. That's what it's talking about. Now, in the Bible, it gets a little more technical definition, gets a little more religious overtones as it refers to a movement of God's people. So in the Bible, it's used never for a location, but always for a group of people. And then it's used in two different ways. And this is where it can get a little confusing sometimes. Really confusing, and we forget that it's not referring to a place. It's always referring to people. But when it refers to people, it takes on one of two definitions. One definition is the whole big C church, the universal church, the one that started with Jesus and goes until Jesus returns. I mean, I guess that spans, I don't know, billions of people. It's everyone who's put their hope and their faith in Jesus and accepted the gift of life through Him. I don't know how many that would be, but that's a whole bunch and covers people that go beyond my lifetime. I mean, that's everybody who's gotten into the kingdom of heaven by Jesus. That's everybody. That's the big C church. And then there's the other usage in the New Testament, and that's the little C church, what I'll sometimes say is congregation or the local church. The local expression of that great, big, huge, massive organization of people under Jesus' banner. So you have this big C church, and then you have the local expression. And Jesus designed that system to help us make verse 23 a reality, to help us hold to the hope that we profess, to hold unswervingly, to not let it go. He designed this system to make all this happen. Now, the American way is a little different. But Jesus designed this to pull us in to His family. He saves us as individuals, but then at the same time, He pulls us into the community of faith where we grow. Or like we say it around here, we take one more step towards Jesus. And that's how He designed it. He designed us to take that step, to have those opportunities to grow and to deepen our relationship. But there's a catch. There's always a catch, isn't there? It's like when you watch something on a program and they sell you this great product and, but you got to call in the next 5 minutes, or you got to click on this ad or use this code. There's always a catch, right? Well, here's the catch. Verse 25 is the catch. Using this system requires our participation. It's not passive, meaning that the church is not something done to you. There's nothing we can do to you to make you grow. You've heard the expression, maybe you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's true. I had an old farmer one time tell me, you can drown them. You can't make them. You can salt the oats and probably give them a heart condition, but you can't actually make them drink, especially if it's stubborn. You can't make someone do something. So using this system requires our participation. Let me tell you how this works in real life. I'm a realist. I lean on the optimistic side, but I'm a realist, all right? Which means this. One of the strangest things to me is professed disciples of Jesus that move from defeat to defeat instead of victory to victory. What I mean by that? What I mean is we all have mountains and we all have valleys. We all have them. We all have these moments and seasons that we are on top of the world and we're like dancing and enjoy. And then we have those other times that we're so far down that we look up to see the bottom of our feet. We all have that. But then there are those disciples of Jesus, those Jesus followers that only ever participate in church life when they're in the valley. And they come seeking something, and then you never see them again until the next crisis. Do you understand that maybe you're getting in the crisis because Jesus is trying to teach you to connect to the system required to make the crisis a little easier? That maybe He actually designed the family of faith to walk with you, and why the Bible tells us to bear one another's burdens, that you're not supposed to carry that by yourself? But you've got to participate. You've got to get in there. You've got to invest yourself. You've got to take those steps. You've got to put the work out, so to speak, in order to get it. You've got to develop a habit that actually has you getting involved when things are not always just terrible. Maybe you've watched these National Geographic shows, like I have, where you watch a lion or lioness. Funny thing with that, the lions don't hunt, the lionesses do it. The lion just sits over there and waits for all the women of the pride to go out there and get the dinner. Anyway, it's totally an aside. So you ever seen the lionesses hunt? It's really amazing how these lionesses hunt. They approach this pack of animals that easily the lioness can overtake, but as a herd, they could trample the lionesses. So they go in there and they create chaos, and it scatters the herd, and then they pick them off one by one, all on the edge. You see, that's what happens to Christians when we get isolated. We become lunch. Because the devil, the Bible tells us, is looking for someone to devour. He's trying to separate you from the herd, because by yourself, you're an easy target. With the herd, you're a lot harder to get to. There's a lot of hooves to protect you. You know what I'm saying? A lot of spiritual hooves. There's a lot of spiritual energy to protect you and to help you and to support you and to keep you in there and not give up on you. But if the only time you show up is when you need something, what's going to happen is you're going to burn bridges. Eventually, that gets old. Living crisis to crisis gets old after a while for you and for those around you. Because the only time they see you is when you have your hand out. They never see you locking shoulders and shields and moving forward to help someone else. They just see you going, I want something. And now you need to give it to me. That's not what He designed the system to be. He designed the system to be something where we can find mutual encouragement, that we can encourage each other to love and good deeds. And yes, when we hit those valley moments and life is hard and it stinks, we're together. That's part of it too. But it requires us getting in there. We can't make you. I can't make you. I want you to. Oh, I want you to. But I can't make you do that. So the habit we have to develop is getting involved in that system, that local church. Because on this very first Sunday of 2022, we have an opportunity, and that's the opportunity to engage in this idea that the habits of the local church teach us how to be more like Jesus. That's what the habits of the local church does. That's what we try to do. We try to help people get engaged with the Lord so they can become more like Jesus. And you can't do that with the whole big, huge church. It's too big. You can't. You can't gather with them. In heaven, we will. In heaven, oh man, there's a scene in the book of Revelation, it's probably my favorite in the entire Bible, when John the Apostle is getting this glimpse of heaven, and he looks out and he sees this moment when every nation, every tribe, every tongue, that's like all people from all times being in heaven, all the saints, and they're worshiping the Lord Jesus. Now, in heaven, fine, we can do all this, because in heaven, we don't have to deal with sin anymore. But here on earth, we're going to have to connect to the local church to do this, because the whole big church is too big. We got to connect with a smaller group. We got to connect with that local expression. You see, here's part of that. That means that we're not called to be spiritual hitchhikers. Spiritual hitchhikers, those people have their thumb always out looking for the BBD, the bigger, better deal. Little better, easy for you to say. A little better program come along at the church down the street, boom, I'm gone. Because they got something better. I'm going to hitch a ride with them. Oh, if they do something I don't like, okay, I'm back over here now. Better yet, I'm going to do this over here, and I'm going to do this over here until I find something better. I got two thumbs. That's spiritual hitchhiking. Guess what? You'll never grow because you're never held accountable, because you don't belong to anybody. You're isolated, you just act like you just think you're not. But you're still isolated because you're actually hitchhiking just to whichever place makes you happy that day. So if you've been here for only 2 weeks, you might still be tempted to think you found a perfect church. But if you've been here 3 weeks or more, you know you have not. I'm not perfect. Our elders aren't perfect. Our staff's not perfect. Nobody sitting around you is perfect. I love the churches of our city. I love Gateway Church. I love Life Place, CPC, Yosemite Church. I know their pastors. I'm friends. I love these guys. They ain't perfect. And the churches aren't perfect, but they're wonderful. And their win is our win, and our win is their win, and their loss is our loss, and we cry and we celebrate together. I have nothing against them. But if you're just hitchhiking between churches, that's not connecting to anything. You're just consuming. You're just kind of gobbling up the good food, and then you just kind of go to the next place and gobble their food, then go to the next and gobble their food. Where do you go when you actually need someone to encourage you? Because you don't actually belong anywhere. Put your thumb down, roll up your sleeves, and connect to the local church, because the habits of the local church teach us how to be more like Jesus. Now, in a sense, the spiritual hitchhikeness that is kind of American culture, kind of Western culture, it's not really your fault, and it's not really my fault. We're kind of taught this. Probably for the, past 100 years, I can't give it a finite number, but recent history, the Western church has gotten this idea that the church of Jesus is like a cruise ship. A cruise ship is something to where, you pay good money and you sit out, on the Lido deck and try not to get sick, I suppose. And you just let everybody wait on you while you just, bask in the warm sun. But the church of Jesus is not a cruise ship where you just get to sit on the Lido deck enjoying the warmth of God's grace while, somebody else brings you your spiritual mimosa. That is not what the church is. But if we think it's a cruise ship, then we're always going to have our thumb out and always going, well, you don't meet my needs, I'm checking out. You don't have what I like, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my ball and go home. Or I'm going to take my ball and go to the church down the street until they don't have... See, it comes because we've been somehow conditioned to think that it's a cruise ship, but it's not. The church of Jesus is a battleship. Very different mindset. In a battleship, the sailors exist on that ship to go to battle, and they go to battle to win, which means even when people are injured, they go to a doctor so they get better, so they can get back out there and win the battle. The whole function is different. The entire purpose is different. On a cruise ship, if you get hurt, you sit in some nurse's thing, or they fly you to shore and you're good. You get on a battleship, they just duct tape it and you're right back out there. It doesn't matter, because the battle, the war is bigger than the warrior. The mission is bigger than the missionary. A battleship mentality is way different. It doesn't even look as pretty as a cruise ship, but it serves its function well. And the church of Jesus is in battle all the time. What's the battle? The battle is to plunder hell and populate heaven. The battle is to come along and tell every man and woman, boy and girl about the goodness of Jesus. That's the battle. That's why we celebrate those white balloons and celebrate those blue balloons, because it means we're doing something in the battle. We're doing something to get hell a little bit nervous about what we're doing. We're doing something so that our Heavenly Father says, good job, kids. Good job. See, that's what our general has told us to do. He's told us to get in there and fight. That's what the local church does. And yet, even on a battleship, there's a pharmacy on a battleship, and there's a little hospital on a battleship. Why? Because people still get hurt, and you still have to care for their needs. That's still true. But the function of that is different. It's to get you back out there and get you back fighting. Because when you start adding all of it up, and you start thinking that I exist to be part of the battleship of Jesus, fighting, the forces of hell to populate heaven, suddenly what I want doesn't seem all that important. I tell people sometimes, it doesn't matter if I like something or don't like something. Who cares? Compared to the heat of hell, what does it matter? I'm going to heaven. I could be miserable with everything going on, and what does it matter? I'm going to heaven. I am supremely happy. But if I can give up something I like so that somebody else can be reached for Jesus, I'll do it every single day. Why? Because the war is more important than me. I'm not the war. The battleship's not coming after me. I'm going to heaven already. I'm one of the sailors. My job is to do something on that ship. And you have a job too. Whatever that is, that's your job. And connecting to the local church gives you those habits of taking that next step, of connecting to what your mission is. So we have to be about investing our lives with our local church, investing ourselves into the local church. You see, there is no plan B. This is the plan A. This is all Jesus has left us with, the church. Is she perfect? No. Has the church as a whole done some horrible things in our past? Yes, we have. We've got some black eyes. We've done some really boneheaded things in our history. Yes, true. But what a beautiful picture of grace and redemption, that Jesus continues to use us, flawed as we are, with all of our bad history and all of our bad baggage. Jesus still uses it, because you know what? That's what the world needs to see. It's not perfection. They need to see us as human. They need to see us as people who have been redeemed and understand that we're not perfect. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more. The world doesn't mind it that we trip and fall. They mind it when we lie about it and act like we don't, because that's hypocrisy. They don't mind that we're human. They mind when we act like we're not. So When we invest our lives in the local church, the first part of that is take the next step. Every week in the bulletin, there are all kinds of next steps that you can take. Connect night. If you're new and you've never been involved in a Connect night, those are a blast. They really are. I love our Connect nights. But it's a chance for you to get connected, not just be a face in the crowd. Get in there. Get invested. Small groups start week of January 16th. You can start signing up today. You can sign up on your connection card. If you know what group you're going to be a part of, write that in. I mean, there are things even like for women. Maybe you want to hang out with some women for a while, get to know some other lady, and you're a lady, and you want to hang out with other ladies. Let me clarify that. This is not a meat market, okay? We're not not a singles club, or not that kind of church. Now, I hope you do. If you're single, I hope you do find somebody in the church. I do. It warms my heart when you find your forever love and you find them in the church. That's just not our primary function. Okay, that said, okay. So, like ladies, you've got this thing coming up at the end of the month, Ladies Craft, and that charcuterie. Look, what it is, gals, if you don't know what that is, they take some Lunchables and they put it on a platter and they charge you a bunch of money for it. Maybe you're into this behavior. This is not for me. I'm a man. It's not for me. But also crafting. That sounds, okay, I would not be into that. But ladies, maybe that's your gig. You can sign up for that. Connect with some ladies. What a cool way to do that. It's on Friday night. Oh, seriously, it's going to be a great event. It's just obviously not for me. I'm a man. But for us men, we have the men's breakfast. Happens on the last Saturday of the month. Took a break at the end of November and December because of how the holidays fell. But we're back at it. And we eat, and we listen to a message, and we chat, and we go home. That's it. And a lot of our guys come out, and they enjoy that so much. A lot of the relationships that our men have made with each other and the brotherhood that has united to us men has been because of these men's breakfast. I highly recommend that, guys. You want to tiptoe yourself into the water of getting invested with into the church? Men's breakfast is a great way to do it. You don't have a ride? Call us. We got all kinds of men that live all over this area. They will get you here. That is not a problem. Maybe you want to serve somewhere. Man, serving is massive. We're going to talk about that a lot. Serving is always on the top of our list of things to do. There are so many ways for you to take another step and get connected and to get involved. It's not for lack of and we actually try to make sure we don't have too many options, because that can be a little scary too when you have 1,000 choices and you're like, I don't know what to do. We try to keep it simple. But there's still plenty of diversity in that where you can find some things to invest in and you can take that next step. And you can get out there and make a difference and know that when you put your head on the pillow, you've made an eternal difference in somebody's life. And it's not just what happens in the whole church, but it also what happens in you as you change. And when you go out, you're different too. It changes your perception and how you see the world. Because at the end of it all, it's not about us. That's something we say around our church a lot. Man, we say this one a lot. It's not about us. Not a cruise ship. Not a cruise ship. We are a battleship. I mean, I look out across, I see your faces, and I'm thinking, I know so many of your stories. And I think you're here because some other people on the battleship went after you, and they rescued you. They showed you something that was different, and they said, try this. And now here you are. And you get to do that for other people. I mean, we get to just pour that out. We get to pay that forward spiritually. I mean, what a gift. Now, this isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing to remind us that everywhere we go, Jesus has given us the joy of being a missionary. That even on our worst days, if you're going to heaven, you got it good. On your worst days. And that we get to tell people that. It's why one of the best answers you can ever give when someone says, how are you? You can say, blessed. I'm just blessed. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, let me tell you. You know, even if everything's falling apart, the Bible still says that you don't go through it alone. That you're not by yourself. You've got Jesus with you, certainly, but you also have your church family. You're never alone. Jesus never designed it that way. He never designed for you to go through life alone. He never designed you to go through struggles alone. He never designed for you to even dance on the top of the mountain alone. He designed you to be in the family and go after this thing together. Because someone's going to influence us. Someone is going to bend us a little bit. Someone's going to teach us something. It's either going to be the world, which is heading for hell, or it's going to be the church, which is trying to keep that from happening. Choose very carefully what is influencing you. Because the habits of the local church are trying to help us become more like Jesus, so that we can get out on the front lines and give people the best New Year's present they could ever get. The best year ever. And that's what we get to do. So connect to the family. Take that next step of investing a little deeper, wherever you're at in that journey, of taking one more step towards Jesus by taking one more step into his family.